But first, the pro-crime party. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, by all accounts, Bryson Christian was an amazing kid. He loved Oreo cookies and SpongeBob SquarePants. His dad said that the 2-year-old was the kind of person who could just light up a room. Well, tragically, that light went out just days ago when Bryson and his 9-year-old brother BJ were shot on a Detroit interstate. And it happened as their family was driving home from baseball practice. Now, BJ survived. Bryson was pronounced dead at the hospital. Less than 12 hours after that, on Detroit's west side, another burst of violence. An 11-year-old boy and his father were seriously wounded after their car was sprayed with bullets. Then, roughly, about 530 miles or so away in Baltimore, just yesterday, a man was shot multiple times in the head in broad daylight. Now, that was Charm City's second murder that day. Hours earlier, a man was stabbed to death. In St. Louis, it was a deadly Father's Day weekend, and things didn't let up last night, with 7 shot and 3 dead in just one neighborhood incident. But that's okay, because I'm sure residents there are comforted by Mayor Tishaura Jones, who tweeted, "After decades of neglect, I'm committed to reinvesting in North City to address root causes of crime. More resources make our community safer." She did thoughts and prayers as well. Root causes, more resources. Doesn't that sound like Kamala Harris's answer on the border crisis? Of course, the truth is, these progressive mayors, these socialist mayors, are themselves drivers of crime. From defund the police to eliminating cash bail to emptying our prisons, the policies they've advocated have made urban areas unlivable, violent cesspools. And of course, now that crime is skyrocketing because of their policies, they're blaming the very group they once attacked for being too hard on criminals.
This rising crime is not the fault of the movement. It's actually the fault of the police, and this has been our point all along. Why should we keep funding systems and institutions that keep rendering themselves ineffective?
After over a year of attacks by Black Lives Matter and Democrats like her and Ilhan Omar, police departments across the country, they're in crisis.
Morale, I think, is at an all-time low now.
We're dealing with rioting at a level and a sustained violence that we've never seen before. We're looking at the most catastrophic staffing levels we've ever seen before.
Several cities have faced calls to defund the police. Others have slashed budgets due to COVID. More and more officers say they feel villainized like never before.
We've reached a breaking point.
It all boils down to these 3 main concepts of being underfunded, understaffed, and undersupported.
That was on MSNBC. But remember, this is exactly what liberals have always wanted. To me, it was obvious since my first criminal procedure class in law school that most Democrats simply don't really see violent crime as a law and order problem at all. They think crime is committed by people who are misunderstood and oppressed, not by people who are a threat. But if you're an evangelical Christian who owns a firearm and flies the American flag, you're definitely a threat. The fact is, crime is rampant because today's Democrats refuse to do what we know works. Remember back in the 90s when crime was ravaging inner cities, there was a bipartisan agreement that the safer streets that we wanted required strong policing and tough sentencing. Today's Democrats are ashamed of that crime bill that Bill Clinton signed and Joe Biden helped draft.
That's not just Mayor P, but Kamala Harris also came out in strong opposition of Joe Biden's architecture of the 1994 crime bill.
Crime is a giant issue as Joe Biden tries to navigate the then and now of Democratic politics.
How does he structure his Justice Department, if he's president, that would give comfort to many people of communities that were disproportionately impacted by the crime bill?
Where was Reverend Al in Baltimore today with all this hell breaking loose? Well, today's Democrat mayors are so dishonest, they're actually pretending that there are no solutions to the crime problem. This is the Washington Post today. Mayors see few options for regaining control. Increased killings may be here to stay. Okay, first of all, that's just a blatant lie, and it's a total setup for Biden's anti-gun push and the Democrats' general push to try to nationalize policing standards in the United States. And of course, we don't have a crime problem because of bad cops or because of COVID or because of too many guns. We have a crime problem because Democrats only care about black lives lost to violence when the trigger is pulled by a police officer. Then they exploit those tragedies to gain political power. But what happened in Baltimore and Detroit, St. Louis over the weekend, that doesn't fit their narrative. In fact, Democrats know their policies are going to lead to more black and brown lives lost. And newsflash, they just don't care. Closing the border, stopping drug cartels would stop crime. Democrats don't care. Supporting DAs who get tough on thugs and gangbangers, that would stop crime. But Democrats don't care. Prosecuting violence and looting like we saw in Portland and Seattle over the past year, that would stop crime. Democrats don't care. Devoting federal resources to stop deadly fentanyl in the same way that they chase down powerless, ridiculous, ostracized white supremacists, that would stop crime. But Democrats don't care. And neither do the media, by the way, because if they did, they'd spend more time with the victims of inner city crime. And they'd highlight what works to stop the violence. Instead, they aim to inflame.
The more you kind of dive into that, the more I'm really realizing how deeply rooted racism is into like my everyday thought process.
A living, embodied anti-racist culture does not exist among white people. White people got to start getting together specifically around race.
White accountability groups are really helpful.
There's a period of deep shame for being white.
There's shame directed, all right, at the Washington Post. It was just disgusting. But every once in a while, a local reporter speaks to a real person who's just trying to survive.
I feel trapped. And eventually I got arthritis of the spine. I'm supposed to be out every 15 minutes, 4 times a day to walk. And I can't do it because I'm scared. I'm damn tired of it. I'm going to tell you like this.
What's your message to the mayor and the commission?
I want to get the together. I mean, you just got to do something. It's not fair.
The left knows it's not fair to the people of Baltimore, St. Louis, all across this country who are suffering in the inner cities. In fact, I'm getting to think that's all part of the plan, though, for the Democrats, because they're willing to accept that old woman's suffering, even the deaths of toddlers like Bryson Christian, if it means keeping minority communities dependent and scared. There are many, many good people in these crime-infested cities. And they see full well that rich white liberals don't give a you-know-what about them. Rich lefties care about things like legalizing pot and transgenderism and abortion on demand. They don't care about black lives in the inner city. Americans don't have to live like this. No one in America should have to live like this, should have to fear walking the streets of their own neighborhood. No one in America should worry about whether the kids are going to come home at night. And no one in America should be stuck inside because they don't feel safe on their own streets. Voters across the country trapped in these unfair cities, abandoned by their elected officials. They have to rise up and join our movement. We know how to make the streets safe again. We know how to build good schools. We know how to create more jobs. We're doing it all over the country. These policies work. They work in Florida, in Texas, in Tennessee, in South Dakota, and beyond. And they'll work in Detroit. They'll work in Baltimore. They'll work in St. Louis. They'll work in New York City and Hartford, all over the country. Anywhere else they're tried. So let's send the left and the criminals packing. And let's make sure we have safe, great American cities again. And that's the angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.